UFC 245 is in the books. I say it was the card of the year. Let's go ahead and talk about it. This is episode 105. Welcome to Combat Sports Talk, a podcast dedicated to UFC and Bellator discussion, the MMA community, and combat sports in general. My name is Ryan Smith, and joining me this week is the double champ, George G-Money Stallworth. What's up, man?
You got it, bro. How you doing tonight?
Man, I am so excited, so ready to talk about this. You know, this has been the card that I have been waiting for so long. We finally got it on Saturday night, and it delivered. This was the fight card of the year. That's all I'm saying.
Dude, not only the fight card of the year, had one of the best fights ever. Like, literally, this fight will go down in history.
The fight you're talking about is Kamaru Usman versus Colby Covington. Colby Covington, that's our headliner. Let's get
Speaking of getting right to it, they did just that.
Yeah, this is the headliner. This is where we talk about the biggest thing that's happening in the MMA world, and that is this freaking fight. That is Colby Covington versus Kamaru Usman. He finally got his hands on him. All that talking about being behind stage, talking about like, yo, you a big man on the screen, but when we get backstage, there was no backstage. It was only the canvas. This was it. You had to put up or shut up, and boy, they did.
Dude, right from the beginning, there was no filling out process. There was none of that. Hey, I'm a jab, you jab. I'm a kick, you kick. None of that. They came right out the gate, firing guns blazing.
They sure did, and that was the thing that was so great about this fight. Now, for those people who are uninitiated, even though at this point you should know, if you've watched this show, you should know what we're talking about when it comes to Colby Covington and Kamaru Usman. Colby Covington, he was a fighter who really didn't have a lot going on. The legend has it that the UFC was going to cut him. They were going to kick him out, not because of his performance, just because people didn't really care. He didn't make people feel anything. No one cared about Colby Covington. And then one fateful day a couple of years ago, I'd say about 2017 perhaps, he defeated Damian Maia in Damian Maia's home country of Brazil. He gets on the mic, says, "This Brazil is a dump. You people are filthy animals." And the rest is history. This gentleman skyrocketed not into the hearts of people, but into the ire of people. People were upset and mad at Colby Covington, and he leaned into it. Started donning the "Make America Great Again" hat, wearing a belt, the interim title belt, and calling himself the champ everywhere he goes. He ingratiated himself with the Trump family, with Donald Jr. and with Eric Trump, who even showed up at some of his fights, and really played off of the visions that we have in our country. And not only did it bring him into the spotlight, it really divided the MMA community. Some people hated him and wanted to see his comeuppance, and other people wanted to really supported Colby Covington, not necessarily because they agreed with the politics, but because they saw this WWE style heel performing taking place, coming onto the scene, and they respected the game, if you will. So this was a person who really created a lot of animosity, but more so than that, a lot of emotion and a lot of eyeballs.
And doubled down very often on it, too. I mean, he doubled down with Fabricio Verdun. I don't know if you remember, I think they were in Australia.
Yes.
Fabricio got so upset when he threw a boomerang at him.
Yeah, like how do you throw – do you know that a boomerang is a deadly weapon? That's like assault with a deadly weapon in Australia. You know, that is not a it's a souvenir. It's not a souvenir. That is a deadly weapon.
Dude, then I think he doubled down again. I'm trying to remember the next incident involving him where he just consistently got pressed. Then he started doing like videos and stuff. He's a fighter that really started I guess you would call them setup videos where he'd have these girls in the background
Mm-hmm.
fanning him, feeding him grapes and things like that. We hadn't seen MMA fighters do that before. I mean, he just took it to a whole nother level. So not just the MAGA stuff, not just that. He started doing, I guess what you would call suspect showmanship.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, cutting these promos, right? Like he's cutting these promos, making fight picks and things like that. I think he may even have had a sponsor of some sort that was supporting him while he's making these videos. You know, and behind the scenes, we know that, you know, he's going and hiring exotic dancers and things like that to appear in the videos to give himself this persona of being this ladies' man. But you know, at the end of the day, it's these videos that, for me, I've been very vocal about how I disagree with many of the things that many decisions that he's made, especially with using women as props, you know, smacking them on the butt and things like that in these videos. And it's like, this is inappropriate. You know, at the end of the day, this is supposed to be a sport. Martial arts is supposed to be about respect, and that should extend to women as well. Now, what we do know is that there is a very large undercurrent of misogyny in MMA. That's just the way that this sport is, and people, you know, are attracted to that. I once spoke out about the usefulness of ring girls when there's a giant jumbotron that's keeping track of the score, and I got called every kind of name. My manhood got questioned. So there is this population within this sport that is very, very misogynistic, and so they actually feed off of the type of things that Colby Covington was doing on these videos. So we've talked a lot about Colby Covington. What I want to do is also talk about. Oh, do you have some more?
Well, no, let's go. I
want to talk about the other guy,
side of the coin.
The other side of the coin. You've got Kamaru Usman. Kamaru Usman is a Nigerian-born American immigrant who came to the United States. Actually, is from Dallas. He grew up in Dallas. And KC, it's so funny. I wish KC was here, but shout out to KC out in Greenville. KC actually went to a rival school. They know the same people. And so you've got this guy who is an immigrant to the United States, became an American citizen, worked his way through college wrestling, you know, became a fighter, became undefeated, and really had this story of the American dream. So you've got this one guy who is being, you know, the heel and the bad guy, and this other guy who is trying to play the good guy. You know, I'm going to make things right, and these two forces were on a collision course.
Absolutely. Now, I don't even feel like Kamaru was trying to play the good guy part of it. Kamaru was just standing up for himself to some degree. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's not like Kamaru had to adopt the cause.
Well, yeah, I'm not saying it was any kind of fake or anything. Like I'm not saying that he was playing a role, but you know, he occupied kind of that virtuous position that he was the one calling out Colby Covington. He was the one that was confronting Colby Covington about.
He was attacked by Colby Covington, and therefore he's on the defensive from the beginning. You get what I'm saying? Like Colby shot out and went at him straight out the gate.
Yeah, and verbally.
Yeah.
Verbally attacked, you know, not physically attacked, but verbally attacked, and on Twitter and things like that. Kamaru Usman,
call him a fake champ. Call him what else did he have for him? There was some other name.
They're using the nickname Marty because, of course, Kamaru Usman was called Marty because the coach refused to call him by his real name. Those types of things. But also, Kamaru Usman's career was one where no one wanted to fight him. Like, this guy had to beg and plead for a top 10 fight because none of the top 10 fighters wanted to give him that shot. Why? Because his wrestling is so strong that very few people have an answer for that type of, like you like to say, chain wrestling, where it's one grapple after another type of grapple after another move, and it just never stops. It's relentless for 5 rounds or for 3 rounds. And so he finally worked his way into the position to fight Tyron Woodley, who was the champ. Colby Covington, who was the interim champ, because Tyron Woodley has experienced lots of injuries that he's had to overcome in his career, Tyron Woodley was the champ. And now Colby Covington was supposed to fight him. Colby Covington, under dubious circumstances, passed on that fight. He said he had to get his nose surgery on his nose. Don't know if it was absolutely necessary or if he was just avoiding that fight. I'm not speculating here. Don't choke on that drink.
Sound like shots fired.
I mean, so Kamaru Usman eventually got his title shot, beat Tyron Woodley, and here we are on this collision course. Colby Covington, the interim champion, who was stripped of his title because he did not fight Tyron Woodley, and Kamaru Usman, who outclassed Tyron Woodley. His first title defense was against Colby Covington, and that's where we are. So a very long way to get to why this fight was important, who these two fighters were, and why these things mattered in the backdrop of this fight, and what a fight it was.
Man, was it? Did you think this would go 5 rounds?
You know what? Actually, I did. I mean, we'll go back to my verdict picks. My verdict pick was Kamaru Usman by decision. So I did think it was going to go 5 rounds, but I thought it was going to be, when you put 2 wrestlers in the ring, what do you expect them to do? You expect them to wrestle. And I thought it was going to be, who was going to get the better of the wrestling. But instead, what they did was they stood in the middle of the ring and they just banged it out for 5 rounds. And I mean, not the most elite striking in the world, but it was definitely entertaining.
Dude, well, not only that, these kind of fights where it's all striking, both fighters leveled up as strikers. There's just no way around it, man. When you put on 5 rounds of striking like that, not one takedown attempt was even attempted. Not one. I can't say that. Marty, also known as Kamaru Usman, did fake it, but I think he had no real intentions of doing that. He just wanted to see a reaction from Colby. I don't think he was really shooting for a takedown by no means. Yeah, but, man, nobody really predicted that this would turn into an all-out fisticuffs and a stand-up boxing match, damn near.
Right, and because of that, it was one of those things where it was entertaining because you're seeing Colby Covington, who's known for this crazy amount of cardio and pressure. In his last fight against Robbie Lawler is one of the most elite strikers at welterweight in the game today. Colby Covington threw almost 600 strikes against him and landed half of them. Like the most strikes ever landed in a UFC fight. Colby Covington did that. And so you saw that, at least in the first round, Colby Covington was really getting the best of Usman, with some of these exchanges. Most people that I've spoken to have given Colby Covington that first round.
Some even gave him the second round. One judge had it 2-2 going into the 5th.
Right, which was interesting.
Another judge had.
Yeah, go ahead.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say another judge had it, I think 3-1 with Kamaru, and another judge had it 3-1 with Colby. I mean, it was if it had gone to a decision, I mean, we'd be looking at a rematch. Definitely.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this was a very close fight. In round 2, I mean, this is where Usman began to kind of settle into the strategy, started landing some great strikes. They both were, while Colby Covington was still landing some, a lot of strikes, Usman was definitely doing a lot of damage with his strikes. He was also working in some of the kicks and the body shots that he started landing early in the fight, and he kept those things coming. I mean, he was really digging into Colby Covington. They were saying how this was going to pay dividends later on in the fight.
Later. Another thing people didn't give Kamaru credit for that really paid off dividends was the push kick to the body. He kept throwing his front teeth to the body, and people don't tend in MMA, they don't give the credit to the teep that it deserves. but a teep will knock the wind out of you. A good teep, and Kamaru just stayed on it the entire fight, man. Every time you looked up, he's throwing this lead kick or the rear kick straight to the body, and it was just a straight teep, and those suck the wind out of you, man. I think that definitely.
You want to talk a little bit more about like what's the mechanics of a teep kick, because maybe some people don't know how to throw an appropriate teep kick. That's why we got a coach on the show. This is great.
The teep, it comes from Muay Thai. Basically, it is called a foot jab, and that's what Marty used it for. Well, he actually used two. He used the rear foot and the lead foot. The lead foot is more like a jab. The rear foot is more like a cross, and these are straights. And he just continued to press to the body on those, man, and they just paid off for him. It's no different than if he was throwing a lead hook or a lead uppercut to the body. They have the same effect, because people look at the teep and they don't think it's a powerful, I guess, kick, because they're used to seeing body kicks instead. The teep can shut you down. An appropriate teep will suck the wind right out of you, and Kamaru stayed on it. Kudos to Kamaru, because the game plan was right on. Work the body, test his cardio. He's known for cardio. Let's drag him into deep waters. And that's exactly what Kamaru did, man. He dragged him into deep waters, and every round he made him test his cardio with either the teep or a body shot. And whoever his coach, his game planning was on that, they followed the game plan, and they did a great job of it.
So we're getting into the third round now, and the third round is where the game changed. And I don't know what the exact exchange were. If you go online, they have still images of Kamaru stepping in, landing what I guess was like a hook, and it broke Colby Covington's jaw. And so Colby Covington,
I thought it was a cross.
Was it a cross? It may have been a cross.
I think it was a cross.
Yeah. So, but Kamaru Usman breaks Colby Covington's jaw in the third round, and Colby Covington at the end of the third round. At the very end because there's 1 minute break between the round. At the very end, he says, "I think my jaw may be broken." And this is where it becomes gut check time for Colby, because this fight is extremely close. Nobody really knows who's winning the fight. And we could tell on the judges' scorecards at this point, it could have gone either way. And Colby Covington has to either give up and say, "Hey, my jaw's broken, I can't proceed," which is what this guy would have done.
Well, not only that, Colby's coach had to step in too and make a decision. Hey, am I going to let my fighter go out there like this, or am I going to, let him down a sword?
So you coach athletes. Talk to us a little bit about the decisions in when a fighter is injured, whether or not you decide to keep that fighter in the fight, or take that fighter and say, you know what, you live to fight another day. So talk to us about some of those decisions.
As a coach, I always want to look out for my athlete's health. If I've got an athlete who's compromised and I'm of the opinion that, hey, it's not worth the risk, there's not a belt on the line, there's not this kind of money on the line. We're talking, in this fight, you got to remember, there's there's show money, and then there's win money on top of that. So this is the kind of money that changes people's lives on top of that. Not only the belt is up for grabs, there is big money on the line. You get what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Me as a regular coach, I don't have that same dilemma. I'm dealing with amateurs or beginner pros or mid-level pros. I don't have anybody at the UFC level just yet, or UFC. I wouldn't say UFC caliber. I think I've got some UFC caliber guys. We're just not in the UFC yet. We coming. Anyway, back to the point. Being that type of coach right now, my decision is always going to be to look out for my athletes' safety. Because most of my guys aren't going to make it to the UFC. Most of my guys are going to need whatever body part we're risking by putting him back out there. My guy can't afford, his family can't afford for him to have to go through and have his mouth wired shut for 8, 9, 10 months or whatever it's going to take, in order for him to heal properly. And then on top of that, pay medical bills and things like that he's going to suffer through. And then on top of that, be away from training, not being able to make the money from fighting either. So it's just not worth the risk to me. This situation with Colby, I can kind of see a little bit different. 1, belts on the line. 2, win money, show money. Big money for these two guys. I'm sure. I don't know what the salaries were. I have to go back and look at it. but I can almost guarantee you it's enough to make me want to step in there and deal with Kamaru.
Not me. You go for it.
I'm just saying. Let me know what the salary was. I think I might take a shot at you. Remember, there's always that one thing. Hey, for $1 million, would you take a punch from Mike Tyson?
Yeah, I kind of would. Just not in the
All
face.
Right,
not in the face.
You get what I'm saying. And so, but again, as a coach, no, I'm gonna err on the side of safety, on the side of my athlete, and live to fight another day. I don't disagree with his coach's decision, though. I understand it totally, and I think honestly, he probably made the right call. It didn't work out in their favor, but I think that was the right call. Let him down the sword on this one. You know, you're not going to get many more shots like this.
Right.
This is an opportunity, and up until this point, that fight was tit for tat. We don't know who was winning at the end of the third round. Mm-hmm. Colby comes out in the fourth round and rocks it. Colby won that fourth round, man.
Oh,
broken jaw. Did he not?
For me, I still thought it was very close. I don't know what I said. We have to go back to the live recording, but I don't know. I know that Colby Covington was winning the fifth round until the fight ended, and
the knockdowns.
Yeah, till the knockdowns happened. But it was very close. It was difficult for me to say, but he did come out with fire in the fourth round as well. I think maybe this was desperation trying to end it because he didn't know how much longer he could take whatever pain he was in. I mean, this is the thing, right? Is that, in the setup, we talked about how Colby Covington was this person who became this villain of MMA. But in this moment, knowing that he has a broken jaw, knowing that this is something that he's been fighting for, and that he was this far away from getting cut from the UFC because he was too nice of a guy. Now you've got a fighter who is literally fighting for his life, and it's hard not to root for this guy.
Dude, you know what? MAGA stuff aside, I became a Colby fan watching him fight the other night. I'm not a fan of his politics. I'm not a fan of the WWE style stuff that he's doing. But watching him fight, he turned me around on him as a fighter. Like, I would love to watch more of his fights. If he puts, and looking at the past few fights he's had, he puts on those same type of fights. I don't know what the UFC was thinking about in trying to cut this man. Like, really?
They were just looking at him like, oh, it's a wrestler. He's just a wrestler. Oh, it's another wrestler. And, the UFC has always, rolled their eyes when another wrestler comes on, even though it's the most dominant style of martial arts in the UFC. Like, every single champion is like a wrestler, except for maybe Israel Adesanya, but John Jones, wrestler. Stipe Miocic, not a wrestler, but Daniel Cormier, wrestler. When you start going down the list, wrestling is the key base. Henry Cejudo, which we'll talk a little bit about later, he's a wrestler. Kamaru Usman, wrestler. Habib Nurmagomedov, wrestler. So it's one of those things where you can't get away from it. It's not pretty, but usually fights go to the ground unless you're really good and you can end the fight quickly with your hands or your feet. But Colby Covington showed so much tremendous heart that, I'm like, gosh, I was mad at this dude, but he's putting in work here. How do you not root?
Can't help but respect that.
Yeah, this was
you
like
might not
Rocky
even root
IV.
For it, but you got to respect it.
We were like the Russians in Rocky IV, man. At first we were booing him and stuff like that, but at the end we're like, whoa, Rocky. Because he's facing adversity, and we teach our kids about facing adversity, fighting through pain, fighting through what's going on. This is that happening on the screen, and I'm like, gosh, how do you not root for this guy? And so coming into the fifth round, he is now going from fighting for survival to winning the fight. Like, he is winning the round 5, the fifth and seminal round, and then boom, Kamaru Usman knocks him down, cracks him
twice.
Colby Covington gets up, gets knocked down again. And the second time, Kamaru Usman swoops down on him, starts trying to land some shots, and the referee swoops in, calls the fight off, TKO.
Well, let's go through a little nuance on this too. The second knockdown, Kamaru jumps on him. There were a couple of what I would consider illegal shots to the back of the head there too. And, I think that's one of the reasons why Colby was contesting the stoppage so much.
Well, he felt like he was still in the fight. He felt like he was still able to intelligently defend himself. Perhaps the fight was stopped early. There was only a minute left, maybe. But at the end of the day, I will always choose an early stoppage that protects the fighter versus a late stoppage where you go from what is the medical diagnosis was a non-displaced midline mandible fracture. So basically, it wasn't a compound fracture. His jaw wasn't like separated and broken. It was basically cracked. But you can go from having a cracked jaw to a fully broken jaw or some type of thing that's irreparable. And at that point, you don't want that to happen to someone like Colby Covington either. And so I respect Mark Goddard for choosing to stop the fight. We'll talk a little bit about what Colby thought in just a moment. So the fight ends. Kamaru Usman emerges victorious. I mean, I was euphoric. It was like, this was such a great fight. And do not freeze frame that. I don't know what I was thinking here. I'm used to not being on video. But anyway, this was an amazing fight. And I think you and I, if you go back to the live video, the live event video, we're both like, how are you not a Colby Covington fan after this performance? How can you dispute the greatness of Colby Covington after watching this? I mean, Kamaru Usman aside, I mean, we need to. I don't want it to sound like Kamaru Usman doesn't have a role in this victory. But at the same time, it's like that's a gutsy performance that he put on, that Colby Covington put on.
Dude, Colby is probably going to become a bigger figure because it has lost, as opposed to if he had won. You get what I'm saying? Because it's like you said, now he's kind of winning over some of the hearts of people. He might not be winning over their minds. Mm-hmm. But like you said, how could you not almost begin to cheer him on? Maybe you didn't want him to win, but he put on a great performance. He put up a hell of a fight, and he made that fight what it was. And number two, he pushed Kamaru Usman to a whole nother level. Mm-hmm. We saw Kamaru against Tyron Woodley. We figured that was the best. But you remember a couple of fights before when he fought, I think, Emil? He said, hey, that was 30% Dana.
Yeah, Emil Meek,
Kamaru wasn't lying in. Kamaru was telling the truth.
Yeah, Emil
Anybody
Meek.
In that 170 division right now, Kamaru's walking around like, you want some of me, old man?
No.
Kamaru
Usman definitely gave 100%, and you can see what happens when someone gives 100%. These types of things happen. So I'm gonna let you know right now. I'm setting you up. But are you a Colby Covington fan now?
I like Colby as a fighter. Okay. I can't say I'm a fan. I don't even follow him on Instagram.
Okay, so I walked out of we recorded Austin Avenue in Plano, Austin Avenue Bar and Grill. So I walked out of there like, you know what, I'm not a fan, but I respect Colby Covington. And then by the time I got home, he had tweeted, and I'm like, that's it. I'm done with Colby Covington. I can't. He had his chance. He had his moment of redemption. This was a redemption story. He went and we set up this whole thing where he was trying to survive. He went and did this whole WWE persona to try to save his career. And then he tweeted, normally people do their screwing in the bedroom, knock the Octagon, Mark Goddard. I go in there to kill or be killed. You rob me of that. You rob the people of a fair fight. You should be ashamed of yourself. Fake groin shot, fake eye poke, fake stoppage, fake ref. At that point, I'm like...
Now, you're also talking to a fighter who's probably concussed.
Don't care.
So you do have to give him the...
Take the phone out of his hand.
out of one of the most prolific fights we've ever seen. He's rocked. He's on his way to the hospital. He didn't even get to go to the press conference. Give the man a little benefit of the doubt. And he didn't verbalize any MAGA stuff. He didn't verbalize any, he didn't go racial. He didn't go, did he?
Using the word fake.
Fake. Come on now, we can't do this.
It's the fake.
The word fake does not belong to Donald Trump.
It is absolutely.
It makes us think fake news. It does put you in the mind of that. But what I'm saying to you is, you get what I'm saying.
No, I hear what you're saying. I don't agree with what you're saying.
I don't think that tweet the persona.
Let me say like this:
was an injured fighter trying to come to grips with something that he still hadn't even seen and fully understand. I've been there. I've walked out the ring, and things that I thought happened didn't quite take place the way I thought they did. I walked out, and I remember one time I walked out of a fight, and I thought a guy threw an illegal knee at me, and when I went back and looked at it, no, he did not. And I was like mad at the ref for it. I was going off. I looked at the ref in the fight. It's like, you're not going to say anything about that? Went back and looked at it after the fight. I was totally wrong.
Okay.
But I was in the mix.
Okay, but
I get it.
Let me ask you. In the fight, did you congratulate the opponent? Do you have show any sportsmanship? Because when you get to this level, you start showing sportsmanship. Oh, well, then this is not apples to apples here. Come on, man.
What I'm saying to you is there was, after I walked out of that fight, I thought something took place. And when I went back and looked at it, it was not what I thought.
All I got to say is this. We wanted to believe that this persona that Colby Covington gave us was an act, was something that he was doing to try to create buzz around him and his career. But you're in this war, and then you start blaming the ref. You take to Twitter and you don't say, "Hey, Kamaru Usman, great fight. I'll see you next time. We'll do this again." Nothing like that. You don't give Kamaru any kind of anything. You just go straight to the
Has he tweeted anything or? Since then?
I mean, I don't know. This is the one that I have, and for me, it's like just like whenever Kamaru Usman talked about 30%, and what will forever be lost to the annals of time is the backstage interview after that Emil Meek fight, where Megan O'Leary interviews Kamaru Usman, and Kamaru Usman says, "Man, that was 30%. Imagine me at 80%." And I was like, "I'm done. I don't care that you just finished the fight. Why should anyone imagine you at 80% when someone should imagine you at 100%? You're like, why would you set the level of 80% and not 100%? What does that tell me about your work ethic?" And I grilled him. You can go back to episodes and episodes. I grilled Kamaru Usman about that. I don't have any patience for fighters who don't have the clarity to be respectful, be honorable, da-da-da-da-da-da. I finally forgave Kamaru Usman because how do you not, right? But at the same time, when you have Colby Covington who comes after a fight like this and then says something like this, this now blurs the line for me between fake persona and who he is.
I think it's not fair to really judge fighters on their comments directly after a fight, especially a fight where they're probably concussed, they're damaged, they probably haven't had an opportunity to view the footage themselves, and they're making statements about it haphazardly. I think it's not fair. Joe Rogan even talks about it, like, I will never interview another fighter after a knockout or after, I believe he's been concussed. It's not fair to judge them on that right there. I get what you're saying. The wordage definitely reeks foul, but I think, again, you're talking to someone who's not fully there right now.
All right.
Or we're talking about someone who's not fully there. I'm not defending Colby. I'm just telling you what it is like for a fighter at that time.
This is episode 105. I'm going to stamp it. We're stamping it. We're going to keep watching and see what else Colby Covington does. Because I guarantee you, you're not going to be able to say that he is going to be concussed a week later when he's talking about how all this stuff was fake and it's fake news and it's wrong and it's all that kind of stuff. He's going to lean into it. I'm now convinced, when you and I were talking about the question is whether or not Colby Covington is going to lean into this whole persona or not. And the fact is that I think that he will. And I think that he's going to lean into it, and we're going to see even more of it because of this tweet right here has kind of showed his hand. All right.
I think at some point, much like the WWE, the heel stuff has to turn over. It's no different than, I wasn't a big WWE fan, but I remember seeing or hearing of a time when Hulk Hogan played, two different roles, and other fighters who did the same thing. I remember as a child, I went to an actual Mid-South wrestling competition, or I don't know what you would call it thing. I was a child there with my uncle. Hacksaw Jim Duggan fought against Junkyard Dog. JYD was the favorite. I don't know if you're familiar with those two.
Absolutely. I'm.
So all fight long, these two are going at it like they can't stand each other. After the fights are over with, I'm walking outside with my uncle to the car, and I'm probably, I don't know, I'm guessing I'm second, third grade, and I see Hacksaw Jim Duggan sitting on a car with Junkyard Dog counting cash. I was heartbroken. It just, it like the persona, the veil got lifted. I was like, oh, this is what we're doing. So,
and this is why I do not like this whole veil of WWE that has been cast over MMA. This is why I don't like it, because of the fact that now people are allowing behavior that is opposite of the spirit of martial arts to be acceptable and normalized because it's WWE act kind of thing, and not because these fighters are making bad decisions. And so
I want to touch on that at some point.
Yeah, and let's go ahead and go through the rest of the results. But I ever since we had our first WWE crossover, I was like, I don't like how this is going. I mean, Brock Lesnar, after he came over, but then we started talking about it. We're making it real, and you've had all of these references, and I was like, this is a bad idea. And I think that the UFC has been forever changed, and MMA has been forever changed because of this link that keeps getting reinforced. But we'll come back to it before the end of the show. Let's go on to the official decision. This is the official decision. This is where we look at the results from Saturday night. Guess what? There was more than just one fight on that card. There were actually 4 other amazing fights and one fight in the prelim that everybody's talking about. So we're going to talk a little bit about it. First fight of the night, Peter Yan defeated Uriah Faber via TKO in the 3rd round. I mean, you and I both talked about this, and this is what's great about you and I having done the live event episode and then coming back and actually doing a video episode looking retrospectively back at that fight. I mean, I love the way you were like, man, Peter Yan is not even reacting to Uriah's fakes. He's just so calm and in the pocket, and he just waited for his moment, and blow, Uriah Faber was looking up at the lights.
Yeah. You hate to see your legends fall. I think I told you that night, man. You were asking me, like, what's wrong? I'm looking kind of sour right now. And it's one of those things, man. And I sympathize with Uriah. We're of similar age, and seeing that take place that way. Can't say I was too happy about it, man.
So he had retired and then decided that he loved the sport too much, decided to come back. He ate up a tomato can real quick to get the ring rust off of him, and then jumped in with the number 4 guy at bantamweight. So, where does someone like Uriah Faber go from here? He looked great until he didn't. He still got it.
Dude, I think no, I don't even want to see that anymore. I was like, maybe another match with Jose Aldo just to go back and try to get that one back, because I feel like they're of, I I think Jose slowed down some now in his career, where Uriah might stand a better chance, but I don't know.
Well,
if Uriah is going to continue fighting, he needs to fight guys more his caliber or someone who's aged.
Yeah, he has always, and I'm going to say this isn't going to come out right, but once he got to the UFC, I mean, WEC alone, this guy was a freak of nature and just unbelievable. But once he got to the UFC, ran into Jose Aldo a couple of times, never seemed to be able to get over that hump to get the gold, the UFC gold. He became kind of that gatekeeper where he's ranked number one at bantamweight, and anyone coming up, you tested your mettle as to whether or not you were worthy of fighting for the title, as to whether or not you could beat Uriah Faber, and everybody but the champion fell to Uriah Faber. It was just one of those things where he'd gotten so many title shots because he'd beaten every other contender.
Other than Dominic Cruz.
And I believe when Dominic Cruz beat him, Dominic Cruz was the champ. So it's one of those things where there's a few guys out there who are phenomenal fighters who could just never win that gold. I'm thinking of Kenny Florian as another example, where Kenny Florian beat every single person but the guy wearing gold, and he did that in 3 weight classes. But speaking of Jose Aldo, go ahead. You're going to say something?
No, go ahead.
Well, speaking of Jose Aldo, he was also on the card, having cut down from 145 to 135 in his bantamweight debut, and he had Magic Marlon Moraes, the number 1 ranked bantamweight in the world, as his first fight at bantamweight. Like, really? This is how you roll, Jose?
Welcome to 135, huh?
I know. It's like most people want a tune-up fight. Most people want to test themselves with someone outside the top 10, maybe someone in the bottom of the top 10. No, this dude picks number 1. I want the number 1 guy at bantamweight and see whether or not I can get in that title shot early. And this was a very close fight.
He may have earned it. So Dana White says, "Hey, Jose's next up against Cejudo,"
which is wrong to me. Like I am. Why? How?
Dana White, because Dana White says Jose won that fight.
Well, Dana White, I disagree. I mean, the fact is that it was a close fight. It could have gone either way. It didn't go Jose Aldo's way. It was a split decision loss to Marlon Moraes. Marlon just fought for the title, so someone like, I don't know, Peter Yan, this dude's ranked number 4, just put out Uriah Faber. Why wouldn't he get a title shot? Why would you give it to Jose Aldo? Is it just because of the money? Like, it frustrates me that the ladder doesn't exist in the UFC. That somebody can not have fought at bantamweight, come in from featherweight with some notoriety, and lose a fight and then get a title shot. Like, How does that work in the real world? Like, how does that happen?
I tell you, Dana White feels like he was robbed.
You win a fight, get that W on the card. Don't walk into a title shot having lost your only fight at bantamweight. That just seems wrong to me.
Well, things like this are running amok in the UFC right now. I mean, Dana White was also saying that Cowboy Cerrone is going to get a title shot. I mean, Connor's going to get a title shot if he beats Cowboy. I don't even think Cowboy's ranked at 155. Not ranked. I don't think he's ranked in the top 10 at 155 right now. Is he? Well,
I think he may be ranked in the top 10 at 155, but definitely not at 170 where they're fighting.
And
this fight's at 170.
They're fighting at 170. How does that relate over to a title shot at 155?
It's crazy. It's cats sleeping with dogs. It's just insanity. I don't understand why we've gotten to this point in the UFC where we can just pretend like there aren't hundreds of other fighters who are fighting their way, fight after fight, up a ladder just to have somebody swoop in and get a title shot when they don't deserve it. and it's wrong, and I would say it's demoralizing, because at the end of the day, what am I fighting for? If I'm a fighter who's ranked number 4, I'm gonna pick on Peter Yan for a moment. I'm ranked number 4. I'm working my way up the ladder. I'm fighting everybody, every comer. I'm looking for I was trying to get TJ Dillashaw. TJ Dillashaw got out, and they give the vacant title shot to Marlon Moraes, and a 125-pounder who's never fought at 135.
Yeah.
And the 125-pounder wins. And now they want to give a title shot to a 145-pounder who lost his first 135er. What am I fighting for at this point? Why am I even here? And that goes for him. That goes for Corey Sandhagen. That goes for Aljamain Sterling, the number 3 fighter, the number 2 fighter. Why are they even there? What does that number even mean if somebody who is not even ranked because they've never fought at bantamweight can get a title shot and lose their first fight? What's going on here? I don't know.
It's like we need to congeal 3 different weight classes: 125, 135, 145.
Just call it the little guy division.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And add a BMF belt.
It helps to be 6'3" and 300 pounds, right? Like I can say little guy. I don't want to fight any of those guys, but I just because leg kicks are a thing. But it's definitely one of those things. Jose Aldo lost via split decision. Then we went into championship row, just killers on top of killers. Amanda Nunes defeated Germaine de Randamie via unanimous decision. What happened? Like, this became wrestling match.
That was a good fight. That was a great fight.
Great fight.
Amanda stepped her game up, man, and totally, mixed it up and went with a totally different style of fighting. Did you see that coming?
No, I didn't. I thought that Amanda Nunes was going to come in there and strike like she always has. And then Germaine de Randamie is like, I'm ready for that. And Amanda Nunes is like, but are you ready for this?
We're going to the ground.
Yeah, and it was round after round.
Even on the ground. There was a submission attempt by de Randamie that almost ended that fight.
Yeah, round number 4.
Caught her in a slight triangle. Mm-hmm. If Amanda's elbow had been slightly a little higher, she would have lost that belt that night, man.
Would have been crazy too, because Amanda Nunes is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. Germaine de Randamie, blue belt. Yeah. Like that, there is significant distance in just the skill of Germaine de Randamie versus Amanda Nunes at Jiu-Jitsu. So to submit a black belt, I was telling you.
I hear what you're saying, but MMA Jiu-Jitsu is so different from Jiu-Jitsu in the gi. I don't know how to tell you, but when you're adding punches into Jiu-Jitsu, it's not really Jiu-Jitsu anymore.
But
it's a different form of Jiu-Jitsu. So
are you saying that that there isn't a wide difference between Amanda Nunes and Germaine de Randamie when it comes to Jiu-Jitsu? Are you disputing their?
I'm saying that when you add punches into your Jiu-Jitsu, it changes the game. It's not. The black belt levels and things like that do get changed. I don't care what kind of black belt you are. Dealing with a punch right down the nose, right down the pipe in the middle of your submission attempt can change your submission attempt.
Okay, but that's not what happened on Saturday night, right? Like,
I'm just letting you know.
Okay,
you're saying that yes, a lesser belt almost submitted a black belt.
Yes, that's significant.
And all I'm saying is that MMA Jiu-Jitsu is not the same as Jiu-Jitsu in the gi.
Okay. I'm not going to dispute that at all because you are the expert. Listen, you trained me, so I ain't
call myself an expert. It's really not the same now.
So a couple other things before we move on from this fight. Germaine de Randamie was lighting the reason why this fight went to the ground was because she was lighting Amanda Nunes up with some strikes, some big knees. Amanda Nunes ate a couple of knees from Jermaine Durandamy. Her size, she's actually a 145er who cut down to 135, and I mean this was super impressive.
Well, while you're playing about the 145 of Jermaine Durandamy, I feel like Amanda really should be a 145er. Looking at her that day, she looked a little, what's the word, less than stellar size-wise. And I've seen her at 135, and I've always thought she was a little bit more cut up than that. This particular fight, she looked a little, what's the word, pudgy almost at 135.
Oh, wow.
So I'm starting to think that maybe she needs to be at 145.
I don't know, man. You just call Amanda Nunes pudgy. She may come looking for you. You know she live here now. She ain't safe in the jungle in Brazil, man.
She's in Florida.
I mean,
she's in Florida. That's like not living in the United States.
Oh, wow. So, yes, and then when Amanda Nunes took Jermaine Durandamy to the ground, Jermaine Durandamy came up with these up kicks and one of them almost knocked Amanda Nunes out. You saw her knees buckle, and her coaches were yelling at her between rounds, you stop eating those up kicks. And you were saying that you felt like they should be illegal.
Yeah. I hate the up kick, man. I don't know why, but it just does not sit well for me. I don't feel like it's an appropriate strike in MMA. I don't know. I'm sure there's going to be other guys, or other people on the other side of the fence when it comes to that, thinking it's, who feel like it's a legitimate strike. But there are certain strikes that can really change a person's life, and I feel like the up kick is one of those. The up kick and this oblique kick to the knee, I feel like are strikes that should not be legal in MMA, especially if and what's even more heart-wrenching to me on this, but a 12-6 elbow is illegal. Because apparently somebody saw somebody break a brick with a 12-6 elbow. And a 12-6 elbow compared to an up kick, I'm sorry, they're two different things.
All right, look. Yeah, we've seen fighters get knocked out with an up kick. So, I put some of those in the same category as like the soccer kick. Like that kick should not be legal. Where someone's on the ground and you just kick them in the head, like with full, yeesh. All right. In the co-main event, Alexander Volkanovski defeated Max Holloway via unanimous decision. This fight was not as close as the other fights on this card. I mean, I really felt like Alexander Volkanovski was winning this fight. I mean, I had Max Holloway because I have my known entity kind of thing, but now Alexander Volkanovski has shown how he can stand with what many people, not George Stallworth, believe as the greatest featherweight to ever do it.
Yeah. And you know what? Speaking of that greatest featherweight, Alex's name is being tossed in there now as the greatest featherweight. I'm like, he just got the belt.
He just got the belt. No.
I mean, come on, people. What are we doing here?
Yeah, I mean, with the whole GOAT conversation, we just like to throw around the word greatest. It's kind of that post-event bloodlust that the MMA community has, right? Like somebody who can be a no-name fighter can win a fight, and next thing you know, you're calling for a championship, calling for a championship fight for that guy. It's like, no, you just want to fight. Let cooler heads prevail. And I'm hoping that's what happens with the Jose Aldo thing. Like, no, we shouldn't give away title shots. We shouldn't give the word greatest around like it's just another word. I mean, there is some meaning behind that word. And I can say that Max Holloway statistically, has eclipsed Jose Aldo in many categories, but at the same time, the longevity that Jose Aldo stood on top of the featherweight division is still unmatched. Max Holloway has a long way to go before he is able to claim that. And to Max Holloway's credit, he'll tell you that. He's like, Jose Aldo's still the king of featherweight.
Yeah.
I'm just doing my own thing.
Yeah.
And that's why I like Max Holloway, because he understands the game and he appreciates, that there are people who came before him who were also great, who were equally great, and he got to see Jose Aldo face to face. All right.
just like there was a passing of guard between Aldo and Holloway, we've just seen that now with Volkanovski, I feel like. And we've got another champion from New Zealand, man. So I'm kind of excited to see what he's going to do in that division and who his matchups are going to be. Speaking of his matchups, do you think Holloway deserves an immediate rematch on that fight?
Absolutely. So first of all, Alexander Volkanovski is from Australia. And listen,
okay.
the Kiwis and the Aussies, they will correct you very quickly. But I absolutely believe that Max Holloway.
I thought he trains out of New Zealand.
I
thought he trains out of New Zealand. He's in the same camp with Izzy.
He's in the same camp as Izzy, but he is very much an Australian. Okay. I know that on the we weren't sure which island that he came from, even on the fight. The live event, but he is very much an Australian. So want to make sure that we're clear before we get all of the people who are watching going, whoa! It's like no, we got you. But we believe that he trains in New Zealand with Izzy and with Dan Hooker and those guys. So camp fighting out of.
I thought on his walkout gear. He had ANZ, Auckland, New Zealand.
No, it's AUS, Australia.
You want to put some money on it?
Yep. Yep.
We'll talk after the show.
You go ahead and name the price while I'm recording. I'll wait.
We'll talk after the show.
This is one where I am supremely confident. So to your question, yes, Max Holloway deserves a title shot, and the reason why is because who you're going to give a title shot to at featherweight, right? Like Max Holloway was on his way to clear out the featherweight division. There's really no one that I think really has a better resume than Max Holloway to fight for the title. So. At this point, I would give it to Max Holloway. After Max Holloway gets another shot at this, then, if he doesn't win, if it's the same kind of thing, then Max has got to go and see what he wants to do. If he wants to move up to 155 and actually change his body, to suit that, because we saw what happened between him and Dustin Poirier at 155, or if he wants to just go ahead and fight at 195 or 185 because, he walks around at much heavier than 145. So I would go ahead and give it to him. Would you disagree with that? Or, I think he deserves a title shot after, numerous defenses of the featherweight belt.
Yes, I do. I'm also trying to think of who else at 145 is in the running or in the mix. And the only name I can think of offhand is probably Brian Ortega.
Yeah. And I don't think Brian Ortega has a better
No one else
resume.
even comes to mind at 145.
Yeah.
No one else even comes to mind right now.
So you also at featherweight, you've got one of the guys I love to talk about, Zabit Magomedsharipov. Who's ranked number 4. You got Yair Rodriguez. You got Chan Sung Jung. Hanato Moicano. So these are some of these guys as you get down closer to the number 10. But Brian Ortega's number 2. Alexander Volkanovski's number 1. Jose Aldo just went down to bantamweight, so he's no longer really an issue at 145. Frankie Edgar, who's also going down to bantamweight. He's fighting... he's fighting
this weekend.
Corey Sandhagen. So, two people who might have had a claim at the fighter. He's fighting Corey Sandhagen, not this weekend. He's fighting Chan Sung Jung this weekend, who's ranked number 7 at featherweight. But Frankie Edgar is also planning to fight Corey Sandhagen in January, which is crazy that he's fighting back to back. Chan Sung Jung could actually hurt Frankie Edgar and may cause him not to be able to fight in January, which I think is irresponsible from the UFC's perspective to use Frankie Edgar when he's got a booked fight coming up. So there you have it. That's the official decision. The last fight, of course, was the main event. We spent a lot of time on it. Kamaru Usman defeated Colby Covington via TKO in round number 5. Just got a few topics that I want to cover off, and then we'll call this show done. We'll go into finding the angles. All right, this is Finding the Angles. This is where we look at the headlines that are making waves. The only reason why I want to do that is because we talked a lot about the main event and the main card, but there's one fighter who everybody's talking about, and that is Chase Hooper. He is like a 20-year-old kid, plucky kid next door who's got mad hands. He made his UFC debut at UFC 245 versus Daniel Tamer, and he won via TKO from a mounted triangle position. Go ahead.
Well, they say his jiu-jitsu is actually more of his fight style, but apparently, like you said, he's got those hands too.
Yeah, the thing is that fight was going on as we were getting set up for the live event, right? So I remember looking at the screen going, I don't know who this guy is, but he just wrapped himself around his opponent, and the last time I saw someone do that look like a python or a boa constrictor wrapping around somebody was when Damian Maia had Rick Story bleeding from his nose like someone turned a faucet on, and Damian Maia was wrapped around him in all this kind of ways like, I'm on you now. I'm just going to start squeezing the life out of you. I'm going to win this fight. That was the same kind of thing I was looking at. I was like, oh, wow, this guy's got some jiu-jitsu. But then whenever his hand was raised, it said he won by TKO. I'm like, dude, and you look at the other guy looks like he was in a car accident. You're like, whoa, where did this guy come from?
Yeah. Dude, and like you said, he looks like somebody's child.
Yes. Got the brown hair, is like a little afro, it just flops around.
Ben Askren called him his son.
Oh, you know what? I think that's a really, really good. That's a good analogy because he just looks like a skinny Ben Askren who hasn't seen the sun in forever. But I'm not on the hype train yet, but I might be. So Chase Hooker was a fighter on Dana White Contender Series. He won his fight and got his contract in July of 2018. This was his debut, and he made good with it. Everybody's talking about him. I can't wait to see what Chase Hooper does next.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing him in the future, man.
All right. The other topic I want to talk about is Henry Cejudo, the king of cringe. He likes to call himself Triple C. I think that C stands for cringe. Triple cringe. This is a guy who's also was irrelevant until he started acting a fool, and people are laughing at him, not with him. And I feel like he is trying to make himself relevant, trying to get that same type of Conor McGregor meets Colby Covington kind of thing, and. He's called out female fighters. He's done all kinds of just antics. And he just released a video, I believe today, on Instagram where he's sitting by a pool with two women in bikinis holding his 2 championship belts. Only one of them, I believe, he's earned. And another woman with a palm leaf kind of fanning him. And he's talking smack to Jose Aldo, and basically offering him a title fight, which I feel is wrong on so many levels. We've already talked about it, but I don't like the notion of these fighters trying to give off some type of bravado, like they're some kind of ladies' man, by hiring women to sit scantily clad with belts on themselves, as props in these promo videos that are as fake as hell.
Dude, I'm so sick of seeing this stuff, and to see Henry Cejudo do this, dude, you're so much better than that. You're an Olympic champion.
Yeah.
I don't know why you of all people would stoop to this kind of level and change, your game like this.
Like Henry Cejudo has the ability to be
I keep
just this
hoping
great
these
story.
Guys that are playing heel.
Yeah.
Yeah, he does. I keep hoping that these guys that are playing heel are going to just show up one day and say, okay, the heel's over with. I'm on to being a better person. That's what I really want to see from Colby. Mm-hmm. Henry needs to win my heart back still. Yeah. Colby, I love the way he fought the other night. He is on the verge of changing people's hearts. Changing their minds. I think he got into a lot of people's hearts. And if he would just go ahead and make that move, he would win so many fans. Like there's no way the UFC would cut him if he would just convert now. Come to Jesus, Colby. Come on. I'm sorry, we're supposed to be talking about Cejudo. Go ahead.
Still, I mean, Cejudo is basically a broke down Colby Covington. It's like Colby Covington is effective. Like people. Only reason why Henry Cejudo's getting the hits is not because people are mad. People are like, why does this guy do this? Why is this guy embarrassing himself in this way? You know, and this is an educated guy. Like, as far as I can tell, and, you know, I'm not trained to be able to understand the difference between Spanish and Portuguese very well, but I believe he did this entire thing that we're talking about. He recorded another one in Portuguese. Like, this is not a dummy. Like, why would you stoop to that level, Henry Cejudo? It breaks my heart to see him think that this is the only way to get the due that he believes he is owed, is that he's got to be this king of cringe, that he's got to be this joker, this jester, this court jester, this fool, in order to try to get the attention that he needs to be able to demand larger sums. Frankly, the way that a lot of these fighters do it, the best ones do it, they knock folks out. They fight often and finish folks, and that's how they get the big deals. That's how Cowboy Cerrone did it. Cowboy Cerrone was fighting 5 times a year. I mean, like that.
Crickets.
Yeah, like crickets. That's how you do it, guys. If you want to get to be a big star in the UFC, fight 5 times a year. Take on any challenger. Finish people.
Let me play heel here.
Oh, brother.
But there's also those fighters who do just what you said and still don't get the notoriety or the paychecks. Or there's DJ, Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson.
Absolutely right. It's a travesty for what happened to him. You know, fighting at these lighter weights. You know, you don't get the respect because you're not this big imposing figure that people fear, even though you're an elite athlete.
Henry is a lighter weight guy, and he's an elite athlete, and he saw Mighty Mouse's problems as far as getting where he needed to be. You know, in terms of social media, in terms of pay grade, in terms of his presence. I don't think we ever would have seen Mighty Mouse go up and challenge for that 135 belt. I know there was talk about it when TJ was there, but TJ started that talk, not DJ.
Right, and because DJ was Demetrius Johnson was content at building his legacy at 125. He was the very first 125-pound champion. He had defended like 11 or 12 times, maybe even 13 times.
Right.
You know, this was a legacy that he was building. But also, Demetrius Johnson wasn't about promo talk. He wasn't interested in doing it. You know, and you know,
Henry Cejudo wasn't either before he turned heel.
But there is a nuance there that you have to appreciate, right? Like, you can't just say it's kind of a, there's an either or, where you're either not talking trash at all and just fighting, and you're a heel where you're putting on this persona of I'm this guy that is a ladies' man who takes on anybody that is worth my time, kind of thing. Like, you can't be Ric Flair and Jordan Burroughs at the same time. Ric Flair being a professional wrestler, Jordan Burroughs being one of the most decorated, wrestlers of all time from the United States. Like, you can't be both of those guys. You've got to choose one. And I think that there is room in the world for another persona, if you will, another position to take, where I am confident in what I do, and I'm going to take on anybody that's out there, you know, and I'm going to finish them, and I'm going to say, that's another one. Who do you have for me next? Just like Ezekiel Elliott, feed me kind of thing. You could have that persona and not stoop to exploiting women. You can have that persona and not stoop to politics. And you can finish fighters, and you can put this resume up where people have to begin to notice you. And the example that I have is Amanda Nunes, because Amanda Nunes does not have the best English. She's not. She's not great on the mic. I love her to death, but she's not great on the mic. But what has she done? She went on, she took all challengers, she started finishing folks, finishing people that we didn't think she could. And next thing you know, everybody's like, ooh, Amanda Nunes, want to talk about her being GOAT, trying to insert her into those conversations between John Jones and GSP. Like, that's what happens when you fight and you're a fighter and you go and you perform and you don't worry about talking smack so much and you don't put on these fake personas and you just do your job and you do it well. It eventually happens. The mob will no longer be able to deny you. And unfortunately, the UFC wasn't willing to give Demetrius Johnson that time, but he was starting to eclipse the records that Anderson Silva set. He was starting to get into these situations where people were beginning to defend Demetrius Johnson's resume. The mousetrap was one of the best, one of the best moves against Ray Borg, where he pulled an armbar out of the midair. It was those types of things were beginning to stack up for Demetrius Johnson, and then the UFC was like, we'll send him to ONE FC and we'll take Ben Askren. But even in so much as Ben Askren, he was kind of the jerk, and he represents this jerk. But that's one thing that we know was authentic from Ben Askren, right? Like he's a jerk, and he's kind of a lovable jerk, and he's got a persona, but he's fighting at 170 too. So it's all of these things. It's not a perfect science. You can't say, hey, there's a straight road for everyone. But I'm just saying, stop choosing the WWE path, because at the end of the day, it just leads to the types of things when you eventually lose. And most fighters eventually lose at least once. When you lose, you've got to deal with the outcome of all of this fake persona that you had. And Colby Covington is now feeling that wrath. Colby Covington now has to see what kind of person he is on the inside to be able to deal with those things that now he has to contend with. All of those tweets, all of those people laughing, all of the memes that are going to start coming out about Colby Covington and having a drink through a straw, which unfortunately for him, he promised in a promo of UFC Embedded. He promised that for Kamaru Usman, and now he's the one with the wired jaw drinking out of a straw. We got one more thing that we got to do, and then we got to get out of here. We are way over time, but I want to make sure that we give some pub to the fight card. Right, this is the fight card. This is where we look at the fights that are coming up this weekend, and we have a fight coming out of Sejek Arena in South Korea. This is Frankie Edgar versus the Korean Zombie. This is a great card too. Like I'm excited about this. We've got a lot of fights on the card. I'm on UFC.com. Normally I have all of this all lined up, so we're gonna go through some of the prelim fights as well. But you've got a lot of the Korean talent on display here, culminating with the main event between Frankie Edgar and Chan Sung-jun, better known as the Korean Zombie. But let's talk about some of these fighters. Jung Yong Park versus Marc-Andre Barreneau at middleweight. You've got Da Un Jung versus Mike Rodriguez. Duho Choi versus Charles Jourdain. In the co-main event, you've got Volkan Ozdemir. Volkan Ozdemir versus Alexander Rakic. And then in the main event, Frankie Edgar versus Chan Sung-jung. We'll make some flash fight picks. You said you want to see the Duho Choi fight, so what's your pick on Duho Choi versus Charles Jourdain?
I'm going with Duho Choi.
All right. I like Duho Choi in this fight, too. He's shown me a lot. It's one of those things where, sometimes when the fighters come over and fight in the United States, they don't fare as well as they do in their home countries. And I don't know, maybe that's just fighting in front of their own fans. I don't know if it's the time change or whatever, but I do like when hometown fighters are fighting in their home in their homeland. So I got Doo Ho Choi in that one. Volkan Ozdemir, ranked number 8 at light heavyweight versus Alexander Rakic, trying to come up. Who do you have?
I don't know, man. I'm not familiar enough with Rakic, but I know he's like 12-1. Not sure, what kind of talent he's fought, so that kind of scares me for Volkan. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna leave that one up in the air, man. I need to do a little bit more research on that.
All right. Well, I actually like Alexander Rakic. Volkan Ozdemir has shown me a lot. He's a knockout artist, and he is a guy that can dispatch Rakic very quickly. But I like Alexander Rakic in this fight. I think he's going to, if he doesn't win by knockout, I think that he'll win a strong decision. And in the main event of the evening, Frankie Edgar is a late fight replacement for Brian Ortega, and Chan Sung Jung it's always a challenge, because when you have to switch the guy that you're training for in midstream, it becomes a dicey type of situation. So who do you have, Frankie Edgar or Chan Sung Jung?
Well, I look at this one as the Korean Zombie versus the American Zombie. I don't know if you remember Frankie Edgar's he fought Maynard, the fight against Maynard.
Yep, Gray Maynard.
You remember that?
He was knocked down.
Yep,
and came back and won that fight
twice.
Yeah,
twice. They would, other folks would have been out of that fight. So we got two guys who are very durable. Mm-hmm. I think Frankie's on the twilight end of his career, but he still can get some things done, man. I don't see this one going 5 rounds. I think somebody's going to the hospital. Somebody's going to sleep on this one. And Chan Sung Jung, the Korean Zombie, keeps pushing forward. So I'm going to go with Frankie Edgar, man. I think Frankie gets it done, shuts down the Korean Zombie, and sends him to the hospital for the night. Yeah,
I think it's going to go by decision. When it's a late fight replacement, a lot of things go out of the window. There may be cardio issues. There may be all kinds of things. I know he was training for Corey Sandhagen, but that fight was still about a month off. So a
month away.
Yeah, I don't know that his cardio is where it needs to be. Chan Sung Jung was training for this, so I think this could go to decision. It could go Chan Sung Jung's way, but I like Frankie Edgar. He definitely gets it done. I'll pick Frankie Edgar by decision. And that is our show. Follow us on social media. On Instagram, I'm at Combat Sports Talk.
I am at Geo Stallworth on Instagram, and you can probably find me there on Facebook as well.
All right. You can go to our website. It is newly redone. I was working on that this weekend at www.combatsportstalk.com. Check out our brand new fighters page. We have an opportunity to interview, thanks to George, we have an opportunity to interview some of the local talent and people like, we didn't even talk about Jeff Neal.
Dude, how did we miss that fight? Oh, my God.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about that.
Platinum Mike Perry, Jeff Neal.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about that fight.
Let's come back to that. Yeah, let's come back to that.
We'll have to come back to that.
I get it, man. That was a great fight. That was the hometown.
Yeah, and so, we have got an opportunity to talk to some of the up-and-coming fighters here in the state of Texas and in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So if you want to hear some of the interviews that we did most recently, check out the fighters page on our website. We're on every one of your podcast vehicles, so whatever you listen to, use for platforms for podcasts, we're on them all. Of course, we're on YouTube. We're everywhere you want to be for MMA action. We'll be back next week. You got anything else you want to say before we go?
It's all you, baby. Go get it.
All right. I want to send a shout out to MMA Junkie, MMA Fighting, MMA Mania, and Bloody Elbow, because those are the sites that are putting out great content for us to talk about on our show. On behalf of George G Money Stallworth, this is Ryan Smith reminding you to keep your hands up, your chin tucked, and throw bombs. We will catch you next time.